They did. So, but you said you worked for a dentist that couldn't see? That's interesting.
Yeah, well, he was 78 and, you know,
But he was
it was
still
his
practicing though, right?
he was still practicing and his team was trying to be his eyes from the other side, and some days he would let them be his eyes, and some days he would tell them to screw off.
Oh my god.
Um,
It kind of reminds me, did you ever see that really hysterical thing with Tim Conway? He was an older comedian that he was
mm,
a dentist and he kept stabbing the people with Novocaine in different places. You gotta look that up on YouTube. It's a
I will
classic.
have to look that up.
It's a classic. So so now um boom, one day you've got a practice, you've got money tied up in it, and whap, so what was that time period like?
So the 6 months after my hand stopped working it was psychological torture because I had everyone was trying to give me hope and be like, you're gonna get back to this. They're gonna figure it out. La la la.
Well, were
And
you able to
inside,
bring other dentists in to keep the thing going, or did you just have to
yes,
close the practice? Okay, good.
yeah. So I was able to bring in some substitute dentists, um, but in my like once my hand stopped working, like the pain for the 3 months before, I was like, I can get through this. I can push through this. And then once my hand stopped working, there was this shift in my body that I knew I was done. And so the hope that everyone was trying to infuse me with and all the advice was this big conflict inside me because I'm like, well, maybe they're right, but maybe I'm right.
Mhm.
And then when I finally got the diagnosis 6 months later at the Mayo Clinic in Scottsdale, it was actually a huge relief because the battle was over. I knew where I stood. I knew I had some big decisions to make as to what my future was going to hold, what my practice was going to do, and there was finally a bit of peace there because there wasn't that unknown that had been hanging over my head for so long.
Well, is this a permanent thing? I mean, if you could you do
Yes,
something right this moment because everything's much better and you're not using it, or is it shot forever?
it's shot forever and it progressively gets worse. So unfortunately, it's my hand is done when it comes to high dexterity things. So I had to make some decisions how I was going to move on with my life.
But gross motor movements are okay or will be okay?
Yeah, there's some deterioration of the muscle chains,
Mhm.
which have caused a little bit of twisting in my spine and whatnot. But um, I still do gymnastics. I can still dance and everything else. I just have to be mindful of how I use my body to
Can you
make sure
tie
that I'm
your
not.
shoe?
I can. Who has shoelaces? I live in Nicaragua now, so I wear flip flops.
Can you lift a fork and spoon?
Yeah, I
Uh,
can lift a fork and spoon.
and
Have
you'll be
problems
able to
opening
do
bottles, but
but you
other than
said
that,
it'll
I'm
be
pretty
getting worse though, right?
yeah.
Wow, boy. Okay, so that was now you have some at least a little piece of what's going on. Then what?
So for the 2.5 years after that, I kept the practice because all the advisors around me were like, "You've built this brand. You're um, a trusted dentist in the community. People will still send you patients. Just bring in associates." So I did that,
Did you go
and
in? Did you go in at all?
I was allowed to go in for limited hours,
Mhm.
according to the disability insurance.
I
And every
see.
day that I went in, it was like someone tore the scab off my heart, and I started bleeding
Oh,
again.
I see.
So it wasn't really very fun. And
Mhm.
I was trying to listen to these experts because they'd seen other people go through this, and they said, this is what you should do. So I listened until I couldn't listen anymore. And then in 2015, the oil crash happened. And my practice was in Calgary, which is the headquarters of oil and gas in our province. And the economy sank. It was tanking so much faster than what I'd witnessed with the global financial crisis. So I decided, you know what? I'm not doing this with me not being able to practice. And I decided to peace out, sold the practice for half of its value, and it was time to move on with my life and pass the torch.
Got it. So how'd you come up with the idea of helping other dentists?
Well, I took the next year after I sold the practice to build my professional dance company, which is called Unleashed Dance Company. And I took that year away from dentistry because people knew who I was. And so if I'd run into them, they'd heard what had happened and there was pity on their face. So I
Mhm.
didn't want to have to deal with that. And so I just spent a year building the company. We were the second largest adult based Latin company in our city by 6 months into opening the company.